Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Mine is on, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I was telling Nico that like a couple weeks ago I got an email from AIGA saying like, hey, Elizabeth, we have this event coming up. We'd love you to host. It's with York Nico. And I had to be like, actually, I'm already talking to him in 2 weeks. So if anyone else went to that, you can tell me afterwards that ours was better. So yeah, just to start, I'd love to hear about sort of the origins. And then also I asked your fiance before this, I was like, can I call him Nick? Is it Nico? How did you end up as
Whatever
New York?
you want.
How did you end up as New York Nico?
So, I was born and raised in New York.
What part of New York? That
around
is
Union
very
Square,
important.
actually,
Okay.
so not far from here. A year after college, I moved to Los Angeles because I was making bad move.
Big mistake.
I was making very low budget underground rap videos at the time, and thought that by moving out to Los Angeles that would be the next logical step for me to make it as a big time music video director. And while I was out there, I failed miserably. I failed my driving test 3 times. I had to share a room with somebody I found off of Craigslist. Wasn't booking any work. So it was really just in the dumps, and LA was just not for me. So I moved back to New York, was living with my parents, and just the music video thing didn't work out. So I was trying to figure out what was next. I knew I wanted to do something within film, but I didn't know what that was. And one day I was just sitting in Union Square, kind of contemplating what I was going to do next. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this New York City character who, in my eyes, was a celebrity.
I'm like the guy with the cat on his head.
Well, no, that's another guy, but that's awesome that you threw it back to him. But no, this was a guy who I'd seen all throughout high school. He was a 6'7" white dude with dreadlocks who carried around a 10-pound sign that said, "The 6'7" Jew will freestyle rap for you." And I was always really curious about this guy, but in my eyes, like I said, he was a Kardashian. He was this huge celebrity because everyone in New York knew who he was. So, up until this point, I was generally pretty shy. I would never go up and just talk to a random stranger. So I used this low point as an opportunity to talk to him, and we ended up walking around the city together for 2 hours, and at the end I asked if I could make a documentary on him, and I'd never made a documentary before, but figured, it's kind of like music videos, let's see how it goes. So I made this slice of life 5-minute film that I put up on YouTube about this New York City character, and it was good. In retrospect, it's not that good, but at the time it was good, and it was a cool story. So I was how can I keep going with this? So I turned it into a series where I profiled amazing New York City characters. And then by the time I finished 16 episodes of this series, this was,
What year is this?
This was 2012 or 13.
Okay, so we're still early social media.
Yeah. So this was around the time that people were really going hard doing YouTube web series. I don't know if that's still a thing anymore.
I'm going to ask someone who's under the age of 25 in the audience.
So I put them out on YouTube, and not a lot of people were watching them. But everyone who was watching them really enjoyed it, and they're like, "Oh, we want more of this." But I was getting bummed out that I was, in my eyes, were telling these amazing stories about amazing human beings, but no one was recognizing it. So what could I do to get more people to be exposed to this talent? It was around the time that Instagram had introduced 60-second video. So I was like, well, why don't I take the same people from these documentaries, and rather than it being a fully fleshed out 5-minute film, it's just slice of life moment on my phone, no cuts, just upload it. And people started gravitating towards that. And that, over the course of 2013, so 12 years, it's kind of turned into what it is today. But so that's where.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's funny. Recently someone asked me, how do you describe, someone's like, oh, who's New York Nico? And I was like, it's just humans of New York, but cool and less mean or less upsetting. I'm sort of curious, how I think there is kind of this tradition of working within short form content and these kind of to your point, like real people. And what I've really always appreciated about your work and what you can really see it in the videos is you have a real relationship. So I'm not surprised to hear you went on a 2-hour walk with someone. It doesn't ever feel like you're kind of using someone for content, which is what I feel so many of the videos that are kind of about finding like oddballs are. It feels like you are really meeting them where they are and having a many-year relationship in some cases.
Yeah.
There's so many people I think of who I didn't know you sort of discovered who now it seems like you have these ongoing things with.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be hanging out with them if they weren't friends. Like I don't, there's a business relationship where you're like only shooting content with somebody, and I don't know, that's just not for me. Like I genuinely have friendships with these people that exist outside of the Instagram. And there's so much, people might think that I'm just like filming constantly, but really it's like a very small percentage of the time.
I saw, I think, in something about your book that came out recently, it just was described as like the New York Nico orbit, which I really appreciated, that it is kind of like, it seems like not only are you present in them, but you've also kind of created these microcosms of individuals and a way of approaching New York that kind of extends beyond yourself. Most of these people that you already knew, like the 6-foot-tall man with dreads who you had sort of seen growing up and then used this as that excuse, or how often were you finding, on every given day you would just come across one of these people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good mix. There's some people who I've known for many, many years, others that I've known for not so many years. A lot of them are business owners that I got to know really well over the pandemic. Some people were introduced to me by other people. I don't know. It's kind of just how you meet friends,
Yeah, one thing I'm really curious about as well is for a while, was watching this project called Storefronts of New York that was about disappearing storefronts. And I think social media is so ephemeral, and I also think New York changes very quickly. I'm sort of curious, like, how do you think about your work within the canon of a changing New York? I mean, even over the course, I'd imagine, of 13 years and your lifetime living here, like, how does this sort of serve as a record?
Yeah. Well, actually, the reason why I started that series, and the series is called Know Your City, N-O Your City. It's still on YouTube. Again, it's like not my best work, but it's good that it's there. But the reason why I started making these films is because I saw these types of amazing characters leaving New York, whether they're being priced out or they're dying or they stop, doing what they're doing. So I wanted to like preserve this moment in time. This was like 12, 13 years ago. And I would say like only a small handful of the people that I documented are still out there. Like Larry the Birdman of Washington Square Park, he's still there. But, Ted Yvonne, the 6'7" Jew, he's not in New York anymore. He just like got up and left. So it was really to, preserve a time in New York because the city is ever changing. But I don't want to be like one of those guys that's like, oh, New York sucks now, like it's losing all its charm, because I think there is a lot, of great additions to the city, and I tried to show that in my most recent book, which is A Guide to New York City. It's 100 of my favorite mom and pop businesses, and most of them are like old school shops that have been around for a very long time. But then I also, profile newer businesses that I hope will sort of like stand the test of time and be one of those like cool, funky mom and pop shops 30 years from now.
Do you feel like there's been a shift now, though, and like, do you find fewer, for lack of a better word, characters, or is it just that the quality of sort of, because I think, again, social media is so strange in that I think it's created a sense of different type of performance. When I think about, so I grew up in Westchester, outside of the city, and we used to come into the city, and I would see the guy with the cat on his head, or I would see, all these.
Cat's name was Nico.
Really? Yeah. Wow, meant to be. And
I was him for Halloween,
really?
Like 10 years ago.
That feels like logical. I would see these people, and it was like, this was pre-cell phone, they did it because maybe they were seeking connection, maybe they were expressing themselves, but they weren't doing it to be photographed. And for example, there's this guy on Instagram who holds up pictures of signs. Maybe people are familiar with him. And sometimes I think like that, and it's like, oh, this is a performance to be documented. And I think I wonder how much in the time you've been doing this, like that has, to me, that's very much shifted the difference between sort of documentary and virality and seeking virality.
Yeah, that is, I still think that there's like a great amount of charm and character in the city, but that is one thing. It's like there are a lot of people who are doing what they do because they want to go viral on Instagram or TikTok. So I try to look for the people that, you know, don't care as much about that, but then, you know, the double-edged sword is that once you put them on Instagram, then they really like it, so then they start being performers. But, you know, I think that that's good because it kind of gives them a career, you know, like I come from a commercial background, so I direct a lot of commercials, and I'm able to hire a lot of the people that I find, you know, a lot of my friends, and it's kind of like helped, you know, jumpstart a career that they want to have. You know, like one of my talent, actually her, Irma, she's like been doing a lot of like commercial acting now and is probably about to join SAG, and it's like, so that's cool to me because she's just like someone I just met in Williamsburg smoking a cigarette on a corner.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, as a deep extrovert who now no longer lives in New York, it's like there is something about the fact that like there's this spark for potential significance in all these moments, and if you just are kind of looking for it, I find that really, really valuable. My parents also moved to New York in the 80s, and yours have been here for, you said, so are you first, second generation, third generation?
Fourth, I think.
Fourth generation,
my
okay.
Grandparent. Would that make me third? Third generation.
Okay.
My grandparents were born here.
And were they always in Union Square area?
No, they were in the Bronx.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's no way to ask you about your parents without sounding like a fangirl. Because when I first met Nico, I was like, I just finished your dad's book. But for anyone who doesn't know, Nico, you could say, are you a Nepo baby?
That was a crazy photo that you guys put up there. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, God, I can't see it, so don't.
With a very big mouth.
Don't look. But your parents are both sort of graphic designers and creatives. And actually, I've never known how to say your mom's last name.
Oh, Louise Feely.
Louise Feely. I've always said filet, like a fish. And then your dad is Stephen Heller, which, as someone who's into design history, big fan. But I'm sort of curious, like how much, you know, both coming from New Yorkers and coming from creatives, like how much that has influenced. Did you always know you wanted to be in something creative? Is that sort of inevitable? My parents are both lawyers, so I wouldn't know. Yeah,
I think it's inevitable, just, you know, being raised by two designers who, you know, their whole life is creating art. They never tried to like push me into doing design or illustration or anything like that. You know, I took some classes at the Art Students League when I was a kid, but that was like the extent of it. But at like a very young age, I think 7th grade, I realized that I wanted to get into film, and they were like very supportive of that. So that's kind of just, you know, what I did. Yeah.
And I mean, I think particularly it's interesting with your mom, like she obviously worked with a lot of New York restaurants, and it's kind of interesting to think that there's sort of multiple generations that are really entangled with the kind of like visual and creative fabric of New York in particular. So I don't know if that's something you two ever talk about.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I grew up like going to all these amazing restaurants that my mom designed the logos for, and and hanging out with these famous artists like, you know, Art Spiegelman and Paula Scher, Seymour Quast, but not understanding their significance within the
Auntie Paula.
World. Yeah, exactly. We have Thanksgiving with them every year.
I think she would die if she heard that. That's amazing. Do you think about, like, I think finding this balance between social media, which is obviously very ephemeral and very, you know, what you do in particular is moving image. How did you find transferring that into your book? Also, please tell us more about your book.
The book.
People should buy the book.
It's called New York Nico's Guide to NYC. You know, it came out like 3 months ago, worked on it for like 2.5 years. And I just thought it was like the next logical step. Like, I don't want to just be on Instagram. I want to make films and, you know, make books and whatever other mediums there are. So I had the opportunity to do that. And I also wanted to like get out of my comfort zone. I'm used to doing projects that are immediate, you know, like that's why I like Instagram, because I can shoot a video and put it up that day and then it's done. But this, I had to sit on it for 2.5 years. And it really like helped test my patience.
Do you feel like like, what's the process of storytelling in terms of, it's like they're both sequences, but a very different, were you doing more written stuff?
Yeah.
Sequencing photographs?
So I had a co-writer. So basically I would go out with a team. I think we shot for like 30 days total, or maybe a little less, visiting about 6 businesses every time we went out. And it was me, my producer, Jessica, my photographer, Jeremy, and my co-writer, Jason. And basically we just like got it down to a science where I would interview the shop owner and Jason would take notes and then Jeremy would take the photos. And so it was basically like what I do on my phone, except with a voice memo thing.
Yeah. So. Why did you choose to do storefronts in particular? I'm sort of curious, like, as you said, you work with a lot of small businesses. What do you think is sort of particular about small businesses as a microcosm of New York?
Well, that's like the most frequently asked question I get, is like, hey, I'm going to be in New York for 5 days. Where should I check out? And then even from locals who are like, asking questions more neighborhood specific. So I figured it was something that, people would want and could benefit the businesses. And I just like love these old school mom and pop shops. Like, again, it's where I meet a lot of my friends and
the third space.
Yeah.
Kind of idea.
Like some of my best friends are shop owners, and it's just awesome to be able to like know where they're at all times. Like if I'm in a bad mood, I go to Village Revival to meet my friend Jamal, who works there, and he's always going to be there, so.
I also notice, of course, like so many of these different stores and people who run these stores have, vastly different focuses. You go to an Army-Navy store, you go to a deli. Also, you told me you're getting married at Katz's, which I thought was like, that's pretty iconic, personally. But do you, like, how do you...
I don't know if you're playing it, but I did an exchange for them because the price tag was too crazy. So they gave me a very generous discount. And I made a commercial for them in exchange. And it's like one of my favorite things I've ever made.
I think I've seen it. It's 2 guys sitting at...
Well, it's the same guy, but they're playing twins.
Okay. Oh, okay. I just assumed. Yeah. It's like Parent Trap.
Yeah.
I thought Lindsay Lohan was a twin for years. I'm a twin, so I'm biased.
Have you ever been to Twins Fest in Twinsburg,
Oh my God,
Ohio?
we talked about this earlier. No, I haven't been. I have a few friends. So I grew up in, like a Westchester suburb, which means there was a lot of people having kids late. So there were 12 sets of twins in my year at school. And so there was just many of us. And in fact, there was another set of twins that had this last name that came right after. So it was me, my twin brother, and then a twin sister and another twin brother. And I've always wanted to go. It's a festival in Illinois.
No, Twinsburg, Ohio.
Twinsburg, Ohio.
Yeah.
And my mom's from Ohio. And it's just all twins. But I like that they have like most look-alike twins, least look-alike.
Least look-alike,
so you
triplets,
went. So you're not, you also can be Ohio Nico.
That's true.
It doesn't have quite the same ring to it. Did you enjoy what was it like?
I loved it. It was great.
Did you feel like you wish you had twins?
I love going to like weird small towns because it's like the complete opposite of this.
But in some ways it's like, is it like, I think the thing about New York is there's just more molecules to bump against each other. I mean maybe it's a good question. Like in some ways I live in Rhode Island now, and I think when I moved to Rhode Island I was a little disparaging of it. I was like, oh, it's New York or nowhere. But I find that I meet a lot of the same kind of quirky, weird, there's quirky, weird people everywhere, there's nice people everywhere, there's assholes everywhere. And I think that said, there is something unique about New York. I wonder if you feel like, as you do these other projects, is it partly returning to New York and finding that balance between those two? Like, what do you get out of those sort of having a regional practice versus an extended practice?
Well, yeah, I mean, people ask me if they think I could do what I do anywhere else, and I think I can, because interesting people exist everywhere. It's just that New York is what I know. Like, I built up 30 plus years of just being here and, getting to know the people and understanding the culture and whatnot. So it wouldn't be easy for me to just get up and move to Nebraska and be Nebraska Nico, But
I wonder, I'm sure the social skills, like I think you, in a funny way, I find you described yourself as, previously shy maybe, but I think people who are a little more reserved, sometimes you're more of like an empty vessel for people to conversationally relate to. I sense, and I think filmmaking and documentary filmmaking, any kind of documentary work kind of requires you to be able to both relate but also step back.
Yeah, I think it's important that like I'm not a character myself, because I don't want to be like I want the focus to be on who I'm filming. I don't want it to be on me. I don't consider myself that interesting. I consider the people I'm filming to be interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it would be a totally different story if I was like this out of control, like New York character with the thick accent.
No, I mean, that's the guys who like, I mean, you can't walk through Union Square without having to like beat off 3 guys with miniature microphones. Like, that's what they want to be.
It's one way to say it, yeah.
Do you ever struggle with like people who are, I don't know how to phrase this, but like people who are just very different than you, like finding that way to relate to them and get people to open up?
No.
Okay, next question.
No, I mean, I don't know. I try to find like the good in everybody, and you know, it's just it's easy for me to sort of be like a chameleon and be able to like, you know, talk to, you know, one type of person. And I don't know what I'm saying, but it's just it's not that hard.
Sounds like you're good at your job, I think is what you're trying to say. Yeah, I'd love to hear specifically, just going back to the book for a minute, like in terms of I'm biased as a designer, but you don't have, you know, your Instagram and your documentary filmmaking. It's a very specific visual world to be working in. How do you translate something like that into a graphic design approach, especially as you said, like New York is always changing, so you don't want to go towards, you know, hand-painted letters if, there you go.
I don't know who included this in the slideshow.
I don't know.
They like really must have dug through my stuff.
You were supposed to send the images to us, so I think you have yourself to blame on this one. Yeah, this is up here for a long time.
Yeah. What was your question?
I do not know. I was saying, how do you, like, this is a page from the book, you know, like, how much do you want to kind of try and mimic things that are happening in design? I mean, in the design of New York City, which is say, like, there's, you know, Massimo Vignelli's subway and things like that.
So, obviously, coming from 2 design parents, and I'm about to
get
married to a designer, like, it was very important that it was well designed. And well illustrated. So I tapped a friend of mine, Chris Wilson, who's a very, very talented artist who I've worked with in the past. And
is he a New Yorker?
Sorry?
Is he a New Yorker?
He's actually from Pennsylvania, but he lived here. I met him while he was living here, and I thought he was. It doesn't. I mean, still, he like captures the vibe super well. So I knew for the cover I wanted like a Where's Waldo, but like my version, and sort of creating a fictitious neighborhood filled with all my favorite people and places, because I wouldn't be able to capture it in one existing neighborhood. And yeah, I mean, I definitely got help from Naomi and my parents. And
that's good. Does it include all 5 boroughs?
It does, yeah.
What's the majority?
The majority is Manhattan, because that's where I'm born and raised, and it's what I know.
Yeah.
I live in Brooklyn now, so Brooklyn was second.
I'm curious, you know, obviously you are doing this personal practice, but I don't, you know, it extends beyond that, but how do you kind of find the balance between your personal work as New York Nico or your book and things like that, and some of the more commercial work that you're doing with, you know, Nike, Knicks, et cetera?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the Knicks commercial. I've worked with them like 4 times. You know, the Knicks is obviously like New York's team. No offense to Brooklyn, but we know what it is. And they were like, for this commercial specifically, this was the first one I did for them. They kind of like gave me carte blanche and they let me do whatever I wanted. And obviously they knew what they were getting into. They knew that it was going to be very like character focused. So actually originally they hit me up because they just wanted me to cast it. They didn't realize that I was a director. So they hit me up. They're like, hey, will you cast this commercial? We want it to like, you know, focus on the fans. I was like, well, I'm not going to cast it for you, but I would direct it and cast it. And they're like, all right. So these are all just like, you know, real New Yorkers that I know and that love the Knicks. And I feel like, you know, half of those people you've already seen on my page.
Yeah. The universe.
Yeah. And then this is from another spot that I think you're going to play for an iced tea company. It's like a small iced tea company. I'm friends with the owner, so they gave me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. And basically, it's just like a love letter to Brooklyn. So it's getting like the most Brooklyn people I know to just talk about why Brooklyn's the best. The brand is called Brooklyn Best.
How do you commission a Muppet to be made?
Oh, that's my friend Aloe. He just has a Muppet.
I sense there's a lot of answers like this.
Well, Allo is a Muppet. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Allo,
I actually don't know the name of the person who
owns the Muppet. I think that's as it should be.
Yeah.
The Muppet is the man.
Muppet. Yeah, I don't talk to him.
I always wonder about that reaction. It's like, just pretend it's not happening. That's amazing. I've always wanted to. I feel very strongly about the Muppets. With documentary filmmaking, I mean, you said you started getting into it in 7th grade. What kind of stuff were you shooting? You said that, obviously you're doing rap videos. How did it sort of transition? Did you always want to have, people as the subject, narratives, like, fiction?
Well, what I was doing in high school was much different from what I'm doing now. I went to like a very progressive art school, and you could get away with anything in the name of art. So as a kind of rebellious kid, I just wanted to make stuff that would scare my teachers. So I would make movies with very fucked up subject matters just to like get a rise out of them. And then that developed into, that's the Cats from the Cats' commercial. Then that turned into music videos that also had like kind of fucked up subject matter, but not as fucked up. And then that turned into music videos that had less fucked up subject matter. And then that turned into documentaries. But yes, the Know Your City series is kind of what started these profiles on individuals. And then the Instagram kind of like took over. And then back in 2019, I made 4 short films that kind of, I kind of like took it back to my roots and profiled 4 individuals who are like, well known on my page, like Tiger Hood, who plays golf with milk containers around the city, and Nelson Molina, who's a sanitation worker who, for 35 years, who created a museum of trash in an active garage. So these were stories that like I wanted to tell. I wanted more time to tell these stories. I didn't want to just like, not to say waste it, but like, just use it for an Instagram reel or whatever. So that was in 2019, and then again got sidetracked with other work, and now I'm getting back into documentaries. So I have a longer film. It's not a feature, but it's like a 50-minute film that's coming out in the summer.
Can you tell us what it's about?
It's about this past year's New York City Marathon. I profiled 4 amateur runners, and it's definitely my favorite thing that I've worked on so far. I know you're supposed to say that about
No, I think I read once this idea called the artist's paradox, where it's like in the process of making anything, you get better, which means you hate a little bit the thing you just made, and then you have to do it again, and unfortunately, it just keeps happening. Yeah. I'm wondering, like, you were saying when you first talked to the Knicks, I didn't know you were also a director. I think there are a lot of people out there, I talk to a lot of young people, who they think this idea of like, oh, having this big Instagram following is like the dream. But I do wonder if it is ever difficult to try and, you're sort of multifaceted in a way that's hard to kind of define, and if that can feel constraining at all to try and kind of like carve this multi-pronged path while maintaining this Instagram, but also building this other sort of maybe more externally oriented career.
Yeah, I mean, I hate when I get called an influencer. I've never considered myself one, but I get it, because like the first thing that people are going to see is the Instagram. But I've always wanted to be a director. That's what I went to school for. Again, in middle school, that's what I wanted to do. So, I mean, I'm taking that more seriously now. But obviously, the Instagram is always going to be,
And I'm sure it opens doors in other ways. And I think when you look at the history of, especially with media, photography, filmmaking, I think, I don't know, it makes me think about someone like Nan Golden, like photographers who were very self-reflexive, and that was an art practice that is now in the MoMA, but at the time was, just photos of their friends. Same with, Stephen Shore.
The way I see like these videos, like hanging out with Green Lady on a Sunday afternoon, like I'll put that on Instagram, it'll get a lot of views, but then I feel like people really never talk about it again. I feel like the films, especially the ones that I was telling you about that I made from 2019, like that's like my proudest work to date, because, and people still talk to me about it and email me about it. And, those are I like being able to have more time to tell stories. And I feel like those are the things that will stand the test of time. But like you said, who knows, like maybe these iPhone videos will become something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, because I think a lot of it's hard to separate out the delivery mechanism from the videos. Like, I think if you went into it's interesting hearing Lexi talk about putting bread in a gallery space. It's like, if you put Instagram videos in a gallery space, that changes how they're read. Like, I think people have a hard time processing work seen in social media as art sometimes. On the other hand, there's the aesthetic of like something shot on an iPhone is going to feel very different than something shot on 35 millimeter. And the way that we kind of like collectively negotiate this work based on where we find it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I have like a New York issued press pass so that I can go to like events and stuff, but I never get taken seriously by real press people with like the DSLR cameras. Like, they're always shoving me out of the way, and I think that's a shame, because I don't think it's like what you're shooting on. It's
Not at all. I mean, as I said, I think I was talking about like Stephen Shore and some of these photographers who were shooting on what at the time was considered to be kind of this, dinky camera. I read this really great book last year called Good Pictures, A History of Popular Photography, and it was about how every time there's an advance in technology with film, fine artists go back one more mode into the prior version of photography, because it gives it a sense of like value and exclusivity. So like black and white was just everything,
right,
until color was invented, and then the art photographers only used black and white as a way to show like we're serious about it. And I think the iPhone is kind of similar. I suspect there will be a shift in how this is all perceived in the future. I mean, I hope. But I mean, I think
you're gonna have kids like 30 years from now shooting on the iPhone 7.
they're just gonna go. Yeah. Just. I was going to say also, like what you talked about with the Green Lady, the idea of, people watch it and never see it again. I mean, some of that I think is also the way, on TikTok, like these things are content, the difference between content and art and the way that we've decided certain things are kind of disposable. Like, are you surprised ever by what has longevity? Are there other shorter videos that you found do resonate with people, or longer ones that don't?
Yeah, I feel like we go through trends, like, especially because of TikTok. Like, there's a very easy way to go viral if you follow a trend.
What is I was gonna say it's.
I don't want to say, because I feel like but everyone if you go on TikTok, like there's a lot of the same stuff, and I don't know. What was your question again?
Oh, just if you feel like you're ever surprised by what is successful.
No, but I'm guilty of enjoying those videos as well. So I think, next year we might have another trend that people follow, and,
Yeah. No, it is. I was curious when TikTok kind of stopped existing for a minute and then came back. But if that was going to change the way people thought about the stuff, because I even think attention spans have shortened, and it makes me I think what I do, despite what we're saying about the different ways of content being treated differently, I think you are able to make short videos have more resonance because of that connection that you have with people, which is really nice. I'm curious to hear also a little bit more about as you said, I was talking about whether or not you would ever leave New York. You don't think you'd leave New York, but if there's anywhere else that you feel like you're drawn to, you've been to Ohio, are there other cities that you feel like you're excited?
I like going everywhere at least once. I like going to Tokyo. I'll go to Tokyo more than once. Very similar to New York in the sense that it's like a big city with a lot of interesting people. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just New York is kind of all I know, so.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess sometimes I think about as I said, I moved and then I came back, and I remember especially after COVID, a lot of things closed, and I always had this weird feeling if I would be doing a normal routine, I'd walk down the street, I'd get off the subway, and I'd walk to a coffee shop, and I'd go, and it would be nothing there. And I think your idea of how do you represent this changing space? I guess you were going to continue this project for many years, even just thinking about the book, for example, if someone picks up your book 50 years from now, how do you think, what will they take away about New York at this moment in time?
Yeah, the book is meant to be a moment in time. The fact of the matter is that a lot of these businesses are not going to be around 50 years from now. But I feel like this, we're in this post-COVID era where, New York still has its charm. We still have, the 200-year-old, nearest tavern in Woodhaven, Queens, and like, the 100-year-old Le Bon Bonniere in the West Village, and like these are all spots that we know and love, but who knows where we're going to be in 50 years. So the book is I don't know if it sounds, like I'm praising the book, but I hope it's like an artifact 50 years from now where like people can look at it and be like, oh yeah.
Well, I think it's also place. Whether it's now or then, I think it's a call to action a little bit for people to, patronize these places and to realize that like you are part of the system that keeps these things alive. And I think it is, I feel bad I'm now about to shade my brother, but my brother and my whole family shares an Amazon account. And I saw recently that my brother had like Amazoned like a roll of paper towels to himself. And I was like, you live in Brooklyn. Like, go outside. And I think it's so easy for us to rely on convenience. And, sometimes you go to these old cafes, you go to these stores, maybe it's cash only. Maybe they don't always have exactly the thing you wanted, but I think there's a little bit of a sweet greenification of New York. And I think often it's like, it is kind of, vote with your dollar and your responsibility. If you want to live in a city that has this kind of excitement and difference, you have to be there to patronize these places. So often I see these places close and people are like, oh, I love that place. I haven't been there in years. And it's too late. So, okay, if you have to leave people with one underrated spot, do you think it's like, if you've lived in New York and you have to go there?
I would say Casa Amadeo in the Bronx. It's like one of the last Latin music stores, and it's owned by Mike, who's 93 years old, and he goes in every day and works, and he's an awesome guy.
Okay, I think that's a great recommendation. Thank you so much. That's
Thank you, guys.
All the time we have. Please applaud Nico.
Appreciate it. Thank you.